Hi everyone. In our previous lecture, we had explained what we mean by the Restoration period. Now we move on to introduce Restoration literature and the comedy of manners. In this lecture, we will first introduce the literature, and in the last part, our focus will be the comedy of manners. I hope you are ready. So here we start. When we talk about the period, please remember that the literary activities that had been thriving in the age of Shakespeare continued into the Restoration era. Even before 1660, many great writers were writing, plays were performed, and theatres were among the most liked places. However, theatres faced closure in the wake of the Civil War in 1642. Broadly speaking, many typical literary forms of the modern world, including the novel, biography, history, travel writing, and journalism, gained confidence in the 17th century England. The Restoration era therefore can be rated as an age of great literary activity. However, Restoration period had no single and unified literary culture because of polarized worldviews. Diversity and polarizations were logical in the presence of the Royalists or conformists and the parliamentarians or Puritans or what we call the nonconformists. It was based on these polarized worldviews that Alexander Pope called the Restoration writers a mob of gentlemen who wrote with ease. We also find value in historical observations that describe the Restoration as an age of excess and licentiousness. This aspect would be explained later. Based on our discussion about the Royalists and the parliamentarians in the previous lecture, please remember that after the Restoration, many Protestants who did not conform with the Church of England were labeled dissenters and were excluded from public offices. But this should in no way imply that they got lost. Instead, they still formed an important body of opinion within the nation. A little while earlier, I mentioned polarization, and this would become evident from reading the works of John Milton and John Bunyan. This should be on the one hand, and writers like John Dryden on the other. John Milton, for instance, was the greatest prose controversialist of the pre-1660 years, but he suffered enforced retirement from the public scene. Thereafter, we see him committing himself to his great poems of religious struggle and conviction, including Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained and Samson Agonistes. A careful analysis of these works reveal that they propped the intricate ways in which God's design revealed itself in human history. They also attempt to justify the steps that had been taken and what had gone wrong while overthrowing Charles I and the Civil War. In fact, Milton saw these events as a revolution in which he had placed great trust and hope. John Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress, the first part of which appeared in 1678, is an allegorical narrative where life is portrayed as a collection of experiences from which men of principles would learn and correct themselves. Life for him is like a sacred journey in which, if there is a desire for redemption, we may succeed in the end by correcting our mistakes and not to repeat them. If we examine the writings of the Royalists, they wrote about the reasons behind the Civil War and idealized the restoration of Charles II. If we read about John Dryden, he was 29 years old when Charles II returned from exile, and little writing by him survives from before that date. In one of his poems, Astrea Redux, he celebrates the Restoration itself, invokes Roman ideas of the return of a golden age under Augustus Caesar in order to encourage similar hopes for England's future. Whereas in 1681, the exclusion crisis drew from Dryden one of his masterpieces, Absalom and Achitophel, in which the Old Testament story of King David, through a clever mingling of heroic and satiric tones, is made to shadow and comment decisively upon the current political confrontation. But please do not judge Dryden a mere propagandist, as his other works made Samuel Johnson declare him the father of English criticism. So this is all that I had for you about the literature of that time. Now we come to discuss the comedy of manners. Please don't follow me in separating the comedy from the Restoration literature. I have done it only to organize this lecture. We must remember that the Restoration literature include comedy of manners as its significant part. When we start any discussion on the comedy of manners, we come across several names like William Congreve, Wycherley, Sheridan, Goldsmith, and some others. They were actually the writers who wrote and perfected these comedies. In the beginning, I referred to the closure of theaters, and I am sure you are a great listener. Please remember that the Puritans closed the theaters as one of their first acts in office, and Charles II reopened them as one of his first acts in office. I am saying it again just to impress upon your mind that these comedies were produced once the theaters were reopened. Okay, let's come to the point and allow me to ask a question. Why do we call it comedy of manners? This is a very basic question, and the answer is because it presents the superficial habits and manners of the elegant aristocracy with their vices, intrigues, and outward glamour of polished behavior. In other words, amorous intrigues are crucial to the play. The main and subplot revolve around extramarital affairs and sexual intrigues and so on. Many critics find these plays immoral too. Is it right to call them immoral? If you ask me the same question, I would reply in one word: debatable. Let us first understand what immoral plays are. A play may be considered immoral because it contains immoral language or behavior, because the wicked characters are not punished, or because the attitude of the dramatist is felt to be immoral. He may not sufficiently disapprove what is presumably wicked or sufficiently approve the good. He may make the evil cause more attractive. Agreed. But this is what we see on the stage. What is the writer's viewpoint is still not known. Does he approve, project, and propagate the immorality he displays in his plays, or he actually tries to expose these same attitudes? Unless specifically answered by a writer himself, this question remains shrouded, and thus I would justify my one-word answer: debatable. Now we take the discussion further. The study of the characters in A Comedy of Manners reveals that they include sexually frustrated widows, bards, country land owners, and fops or dandies, or men who are extremely interested in their appearance and who wear very decorative clothes. The dialogues are full of wit and satire, and we notice that women actresses occupy the stage for the first time. Earlier, women roles were performed by men. Now, if you allow me, I will introduce one such play written by William Wycherley, and it's The Country Wife. In this play, Harry Horner is a notorious womanizer who spreads a rumor that he has contracted venereal disease, and that while being treated for this by a French surgeon, he has accidentally been made impotent. He also persuades his friend, who happens to be a quack, to spread this story all over town, hoping that immature men will leave their wives, sisters, and daughters with Horner without suspicion that he might seduce them. We can say that Horner risks his reputation for getting easy access to honorable women. While the honorable women also are happy to take advantage of this situation, as it protects their reputation in society while allowing them to pursue their own hedonistic desires. Once we know about the plot, we may argue that what Wycherley wants to communicate through the play is that reputations often do not align with reality, and that Restoration Society is more interested in the appearance of virtue than the practice of it. In a similar fashion, the comedy also includes the message that people are wrong when they define and restrict the marriage institution to mutual respect and love. Here in the play, we see marriage as a tool and a transaction, especially among wealthy class people. They view marriage materially and for social reasons rather than because the couple is in love. If so, then we can also opine that Wycherley is critical of this approach and portrays married life as an unnatural, unpleasant state that puts women in danger of mistreatment by their husbands. Further, any marriage would be a joke and an absurd trade if it forces people to act against their natural inclinations. We have another theme of the play, but that would require me to distract you from the actual topic for a while. So, we know that the Restoration was a period of rebellion against Puritanism, which was enforced in England after the defeat of Charles I in the English Civil War. During this period of Puritan rule, theatres were closed and activities such as dancing and drinking were heavily censored. After the restoration of Charles II, These things were flaunted in popular drama, and the theatre once again became an important aspect of social life in London. Thus, Wycherley in his play The Country Wife suggests that forbidding things make them more desirable. It pokes fun at the Puritan government that chose to ban various allegedly sinful activities in order to keep people away from them, and suggests that by doing so, that government accidentally encouraged people to take sinful activities up. The above discussion is also supported when Wycherley uses various characters in The Country Wife to personify the Puritan approach to sin. I mean, the idea that people should be kept away from immoral things to avoid being corrupted. Sir Jasper Fidget, a character in the play, for instance, makes it his business to find entertainment for his wife and sister, Lady Fidget and Mrs. Dainty Fidget, because he believes that if he does not, they will find it for themselves. A husband, therefore, in Sir Jasper's mind, should control his wife's behavior and will have more success at this if she is distracted than if she is left to her own devices. This suggests that Sir Jasper has a puritanical attitude towards women and believes that they must be kept away from vice to keep them from being corrupted. Another male character, Mr. Pinchwife, mirrors this attitude in his treatment of Margery, who is his wife. He keeps her locked up so that she will not learn deceitful behavior from corrupt influences in the outside world. This implies that according to men like Pinchwife and Sir Jasper, it is better to force people to behave well than to allow people the freedom to make moral decisions for themselves. They incorrectly believe that limiting people's choices and censoring society is a way to restrict and control behavior. Let's hope that these few bits of information have made your mind clear about what the comedy of manners would look like. Now I'm leaving the country wife, and in the next few moments we are going to discuss another important comedy of manners written by William Congreve, entitled The Way of the World. In this play, we come across the efforts of the lovers Mellement and Marable to obtain the permission of Melament's aunt, whose name is Lady Wishfort, for their marriage. After several misunderstandings, and when other complications are cleared up, the two finally obtain her consent. Permission from Lady Wishfort may be interpreted at two levels. One is financial and the other one is moral. In the play, we are told that half of Melament's fortune, amounting to some £6,000, is controlled by Lady Wishfort, to be turned over to Melament if she married a suitor approved by her aunt. Thus, we can say that money is Lady Wishfort's sole hold over her child and her ward. Otherwise, Marable would have not cared seeking permission from her. In this sense, we can say that marriage and relations are materially motivated and they have lost the elements of respect and love. And now I tell you about the moral side of the permission. In the past, Mirabell had offended Lady Wishfort. She had misinterpreted his flattery as love. He therefore lacks courage and moral authority to present himself worthy of Mirabell. Even Lady Wishfort would find it less comfortable to confront him as a suitor for someone else. I hope the discussion is making sense. Everyone in the play is a culprit. Anyhow, you can get ample idea about the theme of this play from its title, The Way of the World. And frankly, Congreve displays a variety of love in the English society of its time. Such an approach is closely related to that of love a la mode, although they are not identical. In the world whose way is presented here, love and money are values to be taken into account all times. If I am to conclude, I would say that the play, which is considered Congreve's masterpiece, ridicules the assumptions that governed the society of his time, especially those concerning love and marriage. So it was all we had for today, but before we finish, please note some other good-mannered writers of the time, including George Etheridge, whose play Love in a Tub, and then Oliver Goldsmith's She Stoops to Conquer, and Richard Sheridan's The Rival. The Rivals are important for you, and you can find them interesting as well. In the end, as usual, please note that if you have any question, you can post your comments, and please don't forget to provide your feedback on the lecture. Thank you for staying till the end. Take good care of yourself. Thank you very much.